Tinkerbell's character is pretty problematic in general.
She's not wearing any pants.
I was just going to say, she's kind of like naked.
Girl, put some clothes on. When you encounter her at Disney World, you're like, I don't know about that.
Welcome to another episode of Is This for Kids? I am Jonathan Bearded Blevins.
I am Katie, Mrs. Ruby.
And today we're going back in time
So far
to a
back in
Disney vaulted movie.
They don't even do the vault anymore because of the, what is it, Disney Plus now.
Oh, I know, but it was vaulted at one point, right? It was old. It's old.
Well, that's how they created scarcity. Is they didn't release it for long.
I have no idea what I'm talking about. I was just trying to use a funny word.
Oh, okay.
A funny, clever word. Hi there. What do you think of me? Make an assessment. We're going to talk about Peter Pan, but before we talk about Peter Pan,
the 1953 version.
Yes, not Hook, which
not
is
the
much
same.
better. Kidding, kind of. Is there a movie you can think of that you loved as a kid and you look back at now and you're like, whoa, that movie had some problems? Or is Peter Pan the only one you can think of right away?
Ooh, Peter Pan is pretty high up there. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that you're going to say something.
No, I'm not. I had nothing prepared.
Oh my
I just
gosh.
had to ask you because you seem to always have just something that you can pull.
So I had, when I was a little kid, we had 2 cassette tapes of, one was Looney Tunes and one was Daffy Duck. They were just cartoons from, it must have been the 40s because the Daffy Duck one was about Hitler. And it was a very weird situation. I was actually talking to our producer about it earlier. And it was really kind of came up oddly. I was like, oh, I actually had that when I was a kid. But the Daffy Duck one was actually so much worse. There was this, I don't exactly know what was happening, but there was this hunter, and then they ended up in this strange situation where it was clearly meant to be an African villager situation, but it was grotesque and they were eating people. And I think even as a little kid at that time, I was very uncomfortable with it. And by that point, that was in the 90s that I was watching it, and it was a movie from the 40s. So it was kind of thing.
Interesting.
Even by my 90s 7-year-old standard, I was like, that's a lot. That is gross.
Yeah. I'm sure there's more out there. I didn't have one planned. I just thought that you were going to go on a little rant, which you just did, which is great. So well done.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Peter Pan today.
Oh, I just remembered
Disney.
Dumbo.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I just remembered Dumbo.
There's these adorable Disney books that summarize the movies, and Dumbo, they summarize perfectly. Nothing wrong with Dumbo.
Except for
in the book.
I was going to say, except for a whole section of it.
Yeah, in the book.
Yeah. Okay.
We're talking about Peter Pan today, the old school Disney, he flies and there's Tinkerbell and all. Do you want to give a little summary, or do people have seen Peter Pan?
You know what? I posted a thing on my Instagram when I did this. Do you remember why Wendy, Michael, and John went to Neverland? Most people were wrong about why. Literally solid 50%. I don't have the actual numbers because they put in their own answers, but it was approximately 50% thought it was because their dad put the dog out. Honest to goodness, they all were because they were angry at their father for putting the dog out. But in reality, the reason was because Wendy was on her last night in the nursery. So I'm going to tell you what happens in Peter Pan because clearly we don't all have a strong memory of it.
You said Wendy was on her last
night in the nursery.
What do you mean?
Mr. Darling had indicated that it was time for Wendy to grow up. She needed to move out of the nursery. And at this point in history, kids would live in a nursery all together until they were grown enough to go into their own bedroom. So Wendy was grown enough to go into her own bedroom and not share a room with her little brothers anymore.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
you know what's funny? Because real quick, I was like, oh, they had to go because they had to find Peter Pan's shadow.
No, they found it.
Peter Pan, they found it.
Yeah.
And that's how they
so many people
conversing.
thought that too. That
Interesting.
they had to find the shadow, and another subset of people thought they needed to save Tinkerbell from something. No, none of that was true.
Save her from her jealous rage ways.
So this Peter Pan is the story of 3 siblings, Wendy, Michael, and John, who are spending who are in their last night, or Wendy's last night in the nursery. Her father has decided it is time for her to grow up and to move on from these kids' stories. And Wendy used to tell her brothers stories about Peter Pan. He was the hero of their children's stories. And on Wendy's last night in the nursery, Peter Pan shows up to retrieve his shadow, and Wendy catches him. And upon finding out that she has to grow up in the morning, he says, fine, you can fly with me to Neverland and never grow up. And they all are like, yes, let's go.
Toys R Us kid. Yeah.
With a sprinkling of pixie dust and a happy thought, they fly to the second star to the right and straight on till morning into Neverland, where they meet Captain Hook and the native peoples and the Lost Boys.
And Shmee.
Yeah. And then
Adventure
Adventure ensues. I don't want to ruin the movie if you never saw it.
There's a clock. It's a whole thing.
It symbolizes death. All right.
What?
But Captain Hook is an adult who's afraid of time, who's chasing him in a clock. Like the crocodile has a clock because time is creepy. He's going to die. He's afraid of his own mortality.
Are you serious?
Yes.
That is not common knowledge.
I mean, I studied English in college, so maybe that's just
put this as a reel. 100%. Can't wait to see. I can already see it. John's an idiot.
Currently,
you're a genius.
right now, there is a reel of Jordan Peterson going around explaining this. That like he talks about human beings being naturally afraid of lizards or something, but also the clock thing.
Okay, absolutely fascinating.
Totally.
Well done.
Yes.
Here's the thing. I want to start by just saying this is one of those movies that my wife and I watched with the kids like 6 months ago or a year ago, and halfway through we paused it and we're like, oh my gosh, there's so many things in this movie that are just interesting and good to talk about. I am not a fan of editing history, so I'm not a fan of like removing some of the problematic scenes of anything necessarily. I don't want to say of everything, but like
right, blanket statements are the worst.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I just did it. Shoot. Not
no, you're
100%.
good. You're like in general.
95%.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of editing out those kinds of things normally because I think so. There's a scene right where there's a bunch of Native Americans who capture them.
They're Native Neverlandians.
Yeah. There's cannibalistic references. They use 4, 5, or 6 offensive terms for them. It's pretty rough, right?
It's bad.
And so we paused it. We stopped. We had a conversation with the kids. It was actually a really good conversation. It was the first time my kids at the time, I think, were like 8, 7, and 3. It was the first time we were able to have like a serious conversation about where they saw racism and we could talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Like we've talked about, you need to love everyone and here's how that looks. But like they have never seen something like horrible like that before. And so we had a good conversation about it. But it was interesting in general. And I think you can use movies like Peter Pan because it overall isn't like, I don't think it's a horrible movie overall, but there is a lot of racism and sexism and a lot of bullying that happens in it that you don't really see in a ton of content anymore. And I think you can use it to have good conversations with your kids. Thoughts?
Yeah, this speaks a lot to what we talked about in an episode a couple weeks ago about anti-fragility, right? The kid getting to experience something bad or hard that's theoretical or that's fictional that they can like work their way through. If they've encountered fictional bullies, they've encountered fictional racists, it's easier for them to encounter them or to deal with them in real life. And like, you ever have that thing where somebody says something to you that's just so rude that you don't even like you 2 days later you can think of a great response, but at the time you're just so floored that somebody was that rude.
Yeah.
I feel like that happens to people a lot. And if you've theoretically encountered it, you get that 2 days back. You can back pocket an answer for when that comes up. I think Disney did a great job with this where they put a warning at the beginning of the movie where they're like, this was wrong then, it's wrong now, but we've left it in there for the sake of posterity or whatever it is that they say. Yeah. They do a good job of like making sure that you're aware there's going to be something in here you're going to want to talk to your kids about. So, yeah.
And by the way, like you should do that, right? Like I think there's some people out there who are like, oh, that's crazy. Like it's whoa. It's like, no, there are nobody thinks that what happens in that scene is okay.
Right.
At least nobody who's like a good and decent human being. Right. And so good to have conversations with your kids about it for sure.
Exactly. Like we don't need to be so the other way. Like you don't have to swing so far the other way that you're like, oh no, let's just not even acknowledge the horrific thing that's happening in this show. Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good point. You didn't think it was like you said you thought it was an okay movie?
Well, like there's just a lot more negative in it than I remember.
Yeah.
Right. So like as a kid, I loved it, but like I think women are portrayed pretty poorly throughout. I mean, like they're all just like raging, jealous people.
You're just describing Tinkerbell.
No, Wendy a little bit too is jealous of Tinkerbell.
Sure.
Right?
Okay,
it's
just a little.
Like, yeah, and then there's even a line in there about jealousy that's like something like nothing is easier or crazier than a jealous woman or something, and it's like it's interesting. Yeah. And so with that kind of stuff, I thought I didn't love it. I mean, Tinkerbell's character is pretty problematic. In general,
she's not wearing any pants.
I was just gonna say she's kind of like naked.
Girl, put some clothes on. When you encounter her at Disney World, you're like, I don't know about that. Like, she's always this tiny little girl.
So I just thought that those things were problematic for sure. And then the bullying, like there's just a ton of it. Like the old school, like bullying still happens today, of course, if not more than ever now with like social media and the way that it can happen.
Very much so.
But it doesn't happen so much like it does in this movie, right? Like people being, and obviously this doesn't happen in the movie, but like the whole like stereotypical being pushed into your locker and those kinds of things. Like that stuff is not happening as much as it did when I was in high school, as much as it did when my dad was in high school. Bullying just looks different now. And so it happens kind of a lot there. And I don't think that's a great influence for kids, but.
Yeah, I'm reading this book right now that talks a lot about boys that push each other around and have rough and tumble play and talk a lot of trash to each other and things like that, and how that's important for development. So I have like half of a thought there, but I'm not expert enough to do it. So go read The Anxiety Generation and get back to me on that one, how you feel about that. But I do think the thing that I love about Peter Pan, I don't love that nobody remembers what it's actually about, because in addition to asking like why did they go to Neverland, I also asked why did they come back, or how did they come back. Like I didn't ask how, but I asked why, and most people didn't know. They were like, I don't know. Like very, very few people even responded to it. Whereas the first question got tons of responses. The second question, people were like, I don't know. They were bored. They were tired. Like, I don't remember. A bunch of people mixed it up with Hook. They were like, they wanted to get back for Peter's kids or whatever.
Yep.
And the answer was that Wendy spent time being the Lost Boy's mother. He brought him to be a mother to the Lost Boys. And after having experienced that adult responsibility, she wanted to go grow up. Like she saw the beauty of growing up. She wanted to go, and she missed her own mother. And so she wanted to go back home and be with her family and actually grow up. And the thing about Peter Pan is that it is a story about facing your fears of growing up. And I think nowadays we want kids to stay kids for so long. And we have this weird halfway thing with it. Like we want our kids to stay kids forever. But the way that we do that is by giving them no responsibilities. So like kids have so many fewer responsibilities. They're not responsible to pack their own suitcases, even to college. Moms are packing their kids up for college. They're not responsible to take care of their siblings.
My wife still packs for my trips, but for me, it's okay. I'm sorry.
Jody make him pack his own suitcase. But like, that we're giving kids adult level privileges without adult level responsibilities, which is something we talked about a little bit with Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a thing that people don't realize this movie was about, and by not watching it, they're missing that message that like growing up is a good thing, and along with the adult level responsibilities come the adult level privileges, like getting your own room. I have a gym playlist. This is related, I swear.
Okay, yep. Hawthorne Heights, Under Oath, all the good stuff on the gym playlist. Yep.
Mine's a lot more 80s, but that's fine. Born to Run. Let's go, Bruce. Anyway, one of the songs that's on there is a 21 Pilots song, very popular, called Stressed Out. Tons of people know this song, but like the chorus in there, I had to write it down because I don't have it off the top of my head. I probably could, but then I'd sing it at you and you'd get all upset with me. It was, you used to play pretend, give each other different names. We would build a rocket ship and then we'd fly it far away. Used to dream of outer space, but now they're laughing in your face singing, wake up, you need to make money. And kids our age relate to that so much. They're like, oh, my childhood's over and I have to get up and make money and it's so bad and it's so awful. And you hear this complaint on social media constantly that like it's too hard to live in this capitalist, post-apocalyptic capitalist nightmare or whatever it is that people call it. That was always true. You always needed to make money. The problem was you were a kid and no one expected you to. Your parents made that money for you. And you were given all of the freedoms of adulthood, all the privileges of adulthood with none of the responsibility to earn it. And now we're looking at a situation where people are growing up and needing to have the resources to maintain the lifestyle they had as a teenager, and they're finding it difficult.
Yeah. Okay, so
That's me being spicy. Sorry, I grew up poor, so.
I love it, but this is what you've made me think of, because I'm with you, and I feel like the way that Jody and I are trying to parent is similar to what you just said, but in I think a good way. So you said that we are giving kids the adult privileges without the adult responsibility. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to do, and what I'm trying to do, is to give them adult responsibility and to give them responsibility in general, mm-hmm. but also not give them the adult privileges too early either.
Yeah.
Right. So like we're trying to balance, like you have to. So our kid, like my kids make their lunch and their breakfast. I did not do that until I was 21. Like my mom literally did my laundry, made my lunch. Like I'm streaming mm-hmm. downstairs and my boys are switching the laundry out. I didn't switch the laundry out literally. Even when I moved out into college, I met this girl who did my laundry. Like, good
job, Jody.
It wasn't Jody.
No,
even.
Jody with the kids.
Yeah,
not you.
Oh yeah, Jody's killing it. And so, but at the same time, not letting them like just like grow up too fast, because like there is something I think that it's nowadays, especially with technology, it's so easy for kids to just grow up too fast. They see things that they before they're supposed to, when they're supposed to still be like learning and adventuring and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm with you, and I completely agree with what you're saying, making sure that they're not exposed to adult, not even privileges, but like media, adult themes.
Stuff.
Yeah, adult stuff too early. I just worry that we're in a place where we're avoiding letting kids earn their way to things. Like, have you been to a high school parking lot lately? There
I have
cars, brand new cars.
Have you?
Yeah, I have a high school aged kid.
Like, no, if I was at a high school parking lot recently, that would be weird. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like when I would pull up to take my kid does online high school now, so this isn't really a thing. But when she was in a school, I would pull up into the high school and see Range Rovers, Jeeps, brand new, like fancy cars newer than the car I was driving.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't the case when I was growing up. It's not the case for my kids. My kids get excited when they turn 14 because they're legally allowed to get a job in the state that we live in. So they go and they get hype about that. So like my oldest daughter, she's going to turn 16 this summer. She's had a job for the last, I think 4 months, and she's been saving and working really hard on that. She does a really good job of donating some of her money and saving some of it and getting to spend some of it. And with Peter Pan, I feel like this is a great opportunity to talk to kids about embracing the responsibilities. Wendy has to mother these children. And in doing so, she's like, you know what? If I'm going to have this responsibility, I'm going to take the privileges. I'm going to grow up.
Yep. Yeah. I think you're spot on. Well done. Listen, I have my minor in literature as well. So you think I would pick up on some of these themes? I never did, but I didn't try to either. What's the age level you think for Peter Pan?
You know what? Peter Pan, I think, is appropriate for all ages.
Wow.
Yeah, as long as you're going to have a conversation about the extremely inappropriate depictions of Native peoples.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and say 5 or 6 and up.
Well, yeah, like whenever age you can sit through a movie. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So we're on the same page then.
Yeah.
And have those conversations. I think it was a year or so ago. We stopped it. We had the conversation, and my kids were a little confused. Like, what? I wasn't even paying attention.
Yeah.
I just thought that they were bad characters, and it's like, well, no.
No.
And so that was good. But yeah, I'm with you. 5 or 6, and don't even rush it, because just a couple years later they can watch Hook, which is 10 times better.
Hook is very good.
Rufio. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. Maybe we'll do that on Is This For Kids? Where can they let us know?
Yeah,
what they want us to talk about.
They could go to isthisforkids.com. That'll get them to our Instagram. That'll get them to our YouTube page. You could probably find the Apple Podcast link on there, where we would love for you to leave us a review. Or, I don't know how you feel about this, but you go to YouTube, you press that subscribe button, little notification every time we get a new video.
Yeah. And you can comment, like, and share as well, and anything like that helps. And it's all free. Those are all free ways you can support it, to share what we're doing, which is awesome.
Yeah, we appreciate that. There is so much content out there for us to navigate as parents.
I'm Jonathan Beard of Blevins.
I'm Katie, Mrs. Ruby. Let us help you decide.
Is this for kids? Pew.